Greetings, hello, how do you do? Welcome to Higashi Ginza in Tokyo, not too far away from the Ginza shopping district. This is actually also considered the Tsukiji area, where Tsukiji market, fish market was until it was relocated a few years ago. And behind me is a very famous building, especially in the 1960s, that represented Tokyo's future. And in this episode, I'm going to be taking a look at this now abandoned building that was once the headquarters to the world's largest advertising agency, which has moved to neighboring Shiodome. This building, though, tells about the legacy of what people envisioned in the 1960s of a future Tokyo. And this is in this building, and the story starts essentially here with the redevelopment of the Tsukiji area. But first, I want to show you what that vision was. I have a picture of Tange Kenzo, who is a very famous architect who was very instrumental in creating some amazing buildings in the 1964 Olympics. Take a look at this building here. This was his vision of what the future of Tokyo would look like. And I'm going to show you more pictures about the 1960 Tokyo redevelopment project. Take a look at what was actually constructed, though. This is the old Dentsu headquarters, completed in 1967, about 6 years after the plans were released to the world. And you can see there are a lot of similarities with the original designs, but you can also see they made a ton of compromises. I'm gonna pan down and then show you that original image one more time, and some of the other images that are related. Again, this building is abandoned, and Dentsu moved out of here in the year 2002, and they moved a smaller subsidiary company, Dentsu Tech, in here until 2014, and the building's been abandoned since then. Here's the picture of the original, so you can kind of compare the two. They did make some big compromises, although you can see that the structure of the building is there. And over the course of this episode, we're going to walk around this building, kind of get a look inside, closer look at the materials as well as the design. I guess they had it actually coming out of the poles there, or the two pillars that would structurally keep it together. I guess there was more than just a few compromises. Again, his vision for the future of Tokyo in the 1960s was more linear, and it was very much influenced by automobiles. This is taking the design even further. Almost looks like honeycombs. Now, Tange Kenzo was responsible for the 1964 Olympics building. I guess you can remember, for those that remember this one near Shibuya. Very, very modern design for the 1964 Olympics. He designed this one as well as so many other really great buildings. I first heard his name, and let's start walking around the building now. I first heard his name when I moved to Hiroshima. Tange Kenzo was responsible for building the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Building, as well as the cenotaph, this beautiful domed place where you could pray to those that were lost in the bomb. Okay, I'm gonna cross the street here. Just want to be careful because despite the lack of traffic, there are pigeons here. Again, this building is completely abandoned. Like it's the parking lot for police vehicles, so I also want to be careful about that. Again, I'm a newbie to the architectural world here, but it's also a really interesting look into where the city was going, and where the city was going back then, and where the city is going today. I remember riding my bike past here when it was actually still in operation by Dentsu Tech. And now you look at it, and it's actually very sad to see this historic building created by one of Japan's most famous, well-known architects is just abandoned. It does look like Art Deco. I know it's owned by Sumitomo Real Estate. but I don't think anyone can buy it. And I'm pretty sure that the price for this is quite high to own a building. But I can understand why Dentsu moved its headquarters to Shiodome, but they might be kicking themselves since now everything is done remotely. Again, there's a police van, which seems like a parking lot for police vehicles. This is where Dentsu Tech would have, you would have gotten permission to go up in the elevators there. I think I was in this building once, because I'd worked with Dentsu in the past. Before I started only in Japan, I did some ad projects with Dentsu. Apps for the iPad and things like this. This could be the future OIJ headquarters, perhaps, if we can get back to 1 million subscribers. Perhaps this could be. I'm touching the poles here. The material looks like it's, I don't know, it's like a concrete, but it's quite almost like a granite-looking concrete. Very interesting. It looks so strong. And you have to remember the history of this area and Tokyo when you look at this. Because in 1923, Tokyo suffered a devastating earthquake, the Great Kanto earthquake, that completely it really, really destroyed the city of Tokyo, especially the Tsukiji area, which is where we are right now. So after World War II, they had a Tokyo redevelopment project in the 1960s. And there's like nobody here. And I guess I've been reading the history a little bit. I'm trying to get a hold of Tange's book on the urbanization of Tokyo following World War II. He had a vision, and I'm going to show you the pictures right now, a vision of a linear Tokyo. And the automobile back in the 1950s to 60s had changed the way that he thought and people had thought about space, because after World War II, Tokyo was becoming increasingly populated. Here's some of the pictures now of what a linear Tokyo looked like. You can see the bridges there. These come from the 1960 Tokyo redevelopment project. I just pulled offline. This is in the middle of Tokyo Bay. Again, a lot of it has to go along the lines. And here's Tange Kenzo, 1981, I believe. This is the building that they had imagined. Great compromises made, as you can see. You can see this is Tokyo Bay, a shot here. And this would be where the Odaiba is. And they're actually building this out with reclaimed land using garbage, but not nearly all the way this way. And this goes towards Chiba on the other side. Tokyo Disneyland would be somewhere over here, where the end of my thumb was. And they built bridges and connected the two lands by filling in Tokyo Bay. This is a pretty ambitious project, and I didn't know about this until a couple of weeks ago when I started researching what they were developing for the 1964 Olympics. It looks really interesting. Again, this is the building, the original designs of the building that we're under right now. It's pretty amazing to me to see that. And you can see the bridges going across there. It's very linear, grid patterned. But that's the way they envisioned life in the 1960s. And this is what we got right above me. Let's keep going around this. For me, it's just so fascinating. Hey, Nagoya John, much love, John. I miss Japan very much and love seeing it through your eyes. I appreciate really very much that you're here watching. I know I'm going live a little bit more since the pandemic hit, because I know a lot of you can't make it to Japan. And if I can just show you a little bit of the architecture, a little bit of the history, a little bit of the attractions, a little bit of what life is like, that makes this channel a huge success. All right, here's the end of the building. And what is now a parking garage, but I don't remember this ever being a parking garage when I rode my bicycle past here when it was still in operation. It just seems like the purpose of this has changed a lot. Now it's more of a parking lot, which makes sense because it's a premium. The real estate is quite expensive here in Ginza. The new, that's true. Who are the IKU BAK? The new Dentsu building is striking. I believe it's like a boomerang looking structure in Shiodome. But when this was completed in 1967, this was a revolutionary design. I mean, everything was, after World War II, a lot of the designs were quite boring, right? They just needed to get buildings up so they could start administration again and start life back to normal. And then people started to get creative. One of them was Tange Kenzo. Wow, you can see it looks like with the cement block sticking out, like it could be created. It was unending. You could just connect it to another building. So they all just sort of connected, right? I think that's kind of the image they were looking for. But they never got it done. Right, this would have been built around the same time as You Only Live Twice. It came out in 1967. So this building was probably being constructed when Sean Connery was here. And he wasn't in Japan for very long. A lot of that was filmed, some of it was filmed on location. Some of it was filmed in England. I'm going through the history of the location shoots for that movie too. But looking around the building, I wonder how much of this has changed around here. You have some seating. I could probably see a lot of the ad guys talking about new campaigns, drinking beers. I did not do that. Daniel, welcome catching your first live stream. Welcome to Tokyo. The neighborhood around this building has changed quite a bit. This looks like a 1980s building, the design, and the rest of them around here, a lot more modern. That one looks like it's also coming from the late 70s, early 80s, and then the higher ones from the 1990s look like they were built. I can tell because I've been here for 23 years. The architecture that was here before and the architecture that is here now. This one is definitely newer because look at the large windows. Japanese are very much covet privacy, so they didn't like having people see into where they live. But now, over the last 10 years, the newer buildings are starting to pop up with more space, more light. And there's a Family Mart right there, and there's another new apartment building. You can just tell because it looks newer windows. And then there's this building, and I don't know what's going to happen. Hey, Brandania, welcome. I don't know what's going to happen to this building. It's been abandoned for 6-7 years now. And I always worry that it might be too late to cover something. And I wish I'd done a little bit more research on this. But I also want to make sure I cover this. I want to make sure I cover this building before maybe one day it's just not here anymore. Right? And then all the news starts to come here and covering the demolition of this art work. But it's so quiet right now. We have the entire place to ourselves. I'd like to get in touch with Sumitomo and try to get inside of this building and make an episode out of this because I am fascinated with the way that Tange Kenzo envisioned the city of Tokyo in the 1960s because he was born before World War II. He saw what had happened during the war, and the way that Japan was laid out after all of the bombing, and especially in Tokyo, was like a blank sheet of paper to create. And to an architect like him, who could see a vision of a future, it must have been fascinating. I believe he passed away in 2005, and he was working until a few years until his death. So he was a very hard worker. He also inspired Kengo Kuma quite a bit, who is the architect of the Olympic Stadium. And Kengo Kuma used to, I really want to sit down with him. I've had drinks with him a couple of times, but I've never really sat down and interviewed him and talked about his designs. And he's been an inspiration on how I look at architecture. I remember just sitting down, I met him at a speech he was giving, and I was working with the group that had brought him there, and the chairman of the company brought me in to sit down with Mr. Kuma afterwards, and we talked for a few minutes, and then I came back to Osaka. I was down in Osaka, and then we went out for drinks and talked for a little bit. Was going to interview him about the designs of the stadium, but the pandemic hit, and a lot of things just happened. But Kengo Kuma started off designing with stone. A lot of his designs started off with stone, and then he moved more to wood. And I believe he was influenced heavily by Kochi Prefecture. Some of the buildings there, including the old Kabuki theater down there, inspired him, and he now uses more natural ingredients than the stone and the cement like Tange used here. It's a striking design. It just doesn't fit anymore with the actual vision of the future. That is over there in the distance, Shiodome. Shiodome is reclaimed land, I believe, that has settled and now become a skyscraper magnet. Shiodome, I guess, is what the future of this area was supposed to be, right? And Shiodome started opening up, I think it was 2001. And since then, over the last 20 years, it has really blossomed into something quite modern. You can get lost down there in a maze of buildings in the subterranean regions. Oh, I like what he's done here. You can see the design kind of sloping up so that the water would come down here. Wonder what it was like when it rained. Guess I got to come back during the rainy season. All right, we'll walk around a little bit through this side. There's nothing saying that we can't do that. Hey, Spike021, we finally caught a stream live for the first time in forever. This looks like such a different kind of building, maybe even more like what I've seen in the US. Could be. It very well could be. The roof of it is really fascinating to me. It seems like it's just cement blocks that interlocked or something and connected. They were constructed before and then put in there and locked together. I'm not really sure how it was all constructed, but they're all very uniform. I can't go inside. The building is abandoned right now, and the real estate agency, Sumitomo, I got to contact them, and I'm actually here just to scout it out because I think that this would make a pretty interesting story for the channel, because I like to challenge myself with stories that are a little bit bigger than what other YouTubers are covering. Everybody hits the surface of stuff, but there's a foundation to the way we see the city of Tokyo. That foundation started after World War II through the eyes of great men like Tange Kenzo. And I say great because I don't know too much about him, but what I've seen is fascinating. Again, I first learned about him living in Hiroshima, about his design of the Peace Memorial, and he's designed so many amazing buildings, including a district in Naples, Italy, I believe. Yeah, I can't get inside there. I wonder what this is here. If you like these abandoned buildings or some of the older architecture of Tokyo, please click the like button. That encourages me, lets me know that you do like this kind of content. I'm gonna come out here to the corner and show you one more time the compromises that they had to make on this building, and kind of ask the question why. Why did they make compromises with this? Because I think if they just challenged themselves, this could have been something really special. But the most frustrating thing, I think, for anyone who has an amazing vision of something grand is to make compromises on that vision. So I can only imagine that it was very frustrating to work with the city and with Dentsu and then say, look, we just don't have the money to create what you want to, but we can make this. It could also be because it is not earthquake resistant. And again, they shut this building down in 2014. I asked Kanai to go online to help me research this because I wanted to cover this today, to try to see if there was some story behind why Dentsu Tech left this building in 2014, why this became an abandoned building. I think it might have something to do with it not being up to code for the earthquakes. You'd think in 1967, when they built this for the future, they would have considered earthquakes. but perhaps that 2011 earthquake was so strong. I know it knocked a lot of the buildings. It made the city question the structural integrity of some of the buildings around here, including this building right here. This skyscraper in the center of your screen is actually the Kabukiza, or Kabuki Theater of Tokyo. Now, this skyscraper didn't exist 5-6 years ago. It's a new building, but Kabuki Theater, after the great Tohoku earthquake in 2011, which is coming up on the 10-year anniversary, did damage the old Kabuki Theater. And from that came a new Kabuki Theater with this in the butt of the building. So it's got the traditional front with a skyscraper in the back, which they can now lease out to other businesses. It was a pretty smart business decision because the real estate in Ginza, as you can see, there's not that many high buildings. It's very pricey here, but they built it with that structural integrity needed for a very strong earthquake. And I think maybe this building was not built that way. Let me show you the pictures here for those that are joining us. How you doing? This is a live stream in Tokyo. I wanted to come here because I'm researching this building for a future episode. This one is fascinating to me. The story going back to the 1960s on this man, Kenzō Tange. Tange is his last name, family name, and first name Kenzo. He created this building that we're underneath here, designed it. It was supposed to look. Let's go back here to the first image. This was the first compromise, I believe, of this building here. And you can see it does have some of the look of it, that the honeycombs, the windows, underneath what looks like a very, I don't know, like a Gotham City look to it, right? And this isn't the grander design. Like, it looks like these buildings could just connect together. Here's the main building, and then they could have really kept building, but they didn't, because it probably was ridiculously expensive. And this was one more time his grand plan, at least the designer's plans. This is Tokyo, this is Chiba. Tokyo Disneyland would be the end of my thumb right there, and they would fill that in with bridges and roads and society living in the sea. That is super ambitious, isn't it? You can see there's the bridges and roads that would have been in the middle of Tokyo Bay. At this time, they were filling in a lot of Tokyo Bay too, envisioning how to use that more appropriately. Jody writes in, could have ran out of money. That could have been one of the things. There could have been a lot of reasons for it. It's not quite sure. But yeah, it's abandoned now. Any questions on this? I'm happy to try my best to answer it, but I'm here just to research this and give you a closer look at something. I really never know how long these buildings are going to be here. And with the 2021 Olympics, these buildings are not going to be staying around forever. So let's walk around to the other corner here and get some distance from this building. I think when you walk away from it, you get a different perspective. There are quite a bit of abandoned buildings around Japan just because the population is decreasing, and the older generation, the newer generation, doesn't want to live out in the countryside. So most of the abandoned buildings are outside of the city. But because it's so costly to destroy a building and build a new one, I don't know. I'm just a little bit surprised that this building has not been destroyed and rebuilt. But it could be just because it was part of that 1960 Tsukiji redevelopment program. So let's go down here to the corner, and we'll have another unique perspective from beyond the Family Mart. This is the Tsukiji area. Tsukiji was the original foreign settlement back in the 19th century. This is where the first U.S. embassy was. So it is a historical place and was bombed pretty heavily during the World War II fire bombings of March 1945. And we're getting closer to the 76th anniversary of that one. All right, let's take a look here across the street and kind of look back. Now, I came to this area quite a bit about 10 years ago when I was working with ADK, which is another big ad agency. I think that's one of the big three. Hakuhodo is the other one. ADK's headquarters used to be at a new skyscraper over there, but they've actually moved to a new building. Oh, wow. So the further away we get, we can kind of see a little bit more of it. Do you see that? Up on the roof. There's another structure up there. Let's cross the street a little bit. Wow. So there seems to be some kind of penthouse. I wonder in the bubble era what this building was like. What was going on there? There must be some secret hideouts or little teeny rising sun type of places, a bedroom and a boardroom, stuff like that. Who knows? I have no idea. My image of Dentsu's headquarters in the 1980s, it must have been a very interesting place with all that ad money coming in through here. Pretty fascinating. Executive suites. Yeah. All right, let's try from back at the bridge where we started from, and I want to show you something else. This place, Tsukiji, is always undergoing changes, and now we're starting to see some of I did a live stream here about a year ago when the pandemic was starting to rage, showing up the copper-plated buildings built in the 1930s after the Great Kanto earthquake. They'd plated it with a copper alloy that would prevent it from buildings from catching fires, because fire was what destroyed most of the buildings back then. Not the earthquake, but the fires that ensued following the earthquake. There on the right side is the old Dentsu headquarters, designed by Tange Kenzo. There, the cement block sticking out of the back of it there, which kind of makes it look very futuristic, like prefab construction, and just kind of click it all together like Legos, right? I think, was it Kurokawa? He was the designed the Nakagin Capsule Tower and the Capsule Hotel. Came in the 1970s, and that was all maybe sort of inspired by buildings like this. That was the image of the future, where everybody was starting to come into the urban areas. Tokyo's population was just skyrocketing back then. Well, if you give a super chat for a bazillion dollars, maybe I will buy this building, because I'd like, oh, we can make that light. Yeah, the Nakagin Capsule Towers was available by Airbnb, but it's not anymore. And I'm not quite sure if it's going to be demolished or what. Every year they talk about the Nakagin Capsule Tower being demolished, but there it stays. And actually, you can get to the Nakagin Capsule Tower if you walk straight this way for about 30 minutes. I've covered that a few times in live streams, and I know a friend of a friend who is a TV director here, who was actually one of the people that were giving his Nakagin Capsule as an Airbnb rental option. It started off super cheap. I think it was like $30 a night or something. And because of demand, it kept going up and up and up, and then it was like $200-300 a night. And I missed my chance to stay the night in there. No shower, I believe, in there. You had to go to the Sento in Ginza. That's a nice shot from here. Oh, and you got a really nice shot of that secret penthouse on the top. Crystal Frost writes in here, "Hi, John. It's good to see you. Is this an older neighborhood? How old is it?" This neighborhood is Tsukiji, Higashi Ginza. This is the area. This is the area between Tsukiji and the Sumida River and Ginza, which is just right there. You see the end of the street right there? That would be Ginza, where all the shops are. The Apple Store is straight ahead, about 250 meters maybe. And this highway right here is also an example of the 1964 Olympics and that great development project to make Tokyo super modern. I've already explained this in live streams before, but this highway was actually a river. And they dried up this river to make it, to very quickly get an expressway that didn't impede on any of the real estate or the land that was being used. The rivers, nobody was using that, right? So they dried up the river or the canal here and they built the highway along there. So it's kind of a sad thing. Now the highway's kind of snake like this. And driving on it, which I have to when I rent a car, get off at Shintomicho to get to when I'm going home. When you get off there, actually in the middle of the highway, I believe there's like a tree or there's some sort of obstruction that the highway splits to go around. And I can see where they've probably had accidents there. We're gonna cross the street here and get another look back at the building. But the pace of progress in the 1960s was just kept getting faster and faster. And then when the Olympics were coming, 1961, 62, 63, they were constructing so quickly. So quickly that I think there was a lot of negative stuff, negative impact, including the de-beautification of the city, which is a controversial project, a controversy over Nihonbashi, which is Japan's bridge, and how ugly it looks now with the overpass. That's a highway that follows above the canals. Here's the building once again from another angle. You can see it more in its totality. If you do like these neighborhood walks and these historical architectural episodes, I'm gonna try to do more of these because it's fascinating when you get a sense of the history. Click that like button because I really do need your encouragement to keep this up. Food gets a lot of views. Architecture and history, not so much. All right, let's take a walk down this way. This building on the right side, on the left side right here, this building is becoming abandoned as well. This was the old headquarters. At least like a third of that building was owned by ADK, which moved to the new building in Toranomon, the new tower over there. And so this building, which looks like it was built at the beginning of the 21st century, maybe end of the 20th and the beginning of the 21st century, is kind of abandoned. There's not as many buildings in there, and I think a third of the building is still available. And ADK had a quarter of it, and it was right next to the Dentsu building right there. Now, Dentsu moved out of there in 2002 and into the Shiodome headquarters, I believe, and they moved their Dentsu Tech division in here until 2014, which had to move out of there, and I'm not sure where they are. But I'll tell you right now, most of Dentsu is working remotely. I have some friends that are all at home and they telework now. You can see in the distance the stone temple. Tsukiji's stone temple in the distance too. It's a very unique building. It's massive over there. Now the wind is starting to pick up on this side. I'm just gonna wrap around one more time and show you one last thing before we end this live stream here. Hey, Miklo235, welcome, new traveler. Awesome. You've just unlocked some emoji. I think we're We're about 20 people away from getting a new emoji, which is gonna be fun to design. We're doing an emoji revamp too for 2021 coming soon. So I wanted to walk to this street because this is the final angle. Now you can see the new buildings now, and how this building, which probably was so new back in 1967 when it was finished, it looks old now. So the vision that Tange had of the future seems dated in the future. That's kind of funny. But let's keep walking. But when I look at that design, I am inspired by it, because sometimes buildings shouldn't be practical looking. They should inspire. And even today, that building does inspire. I think it just looks dated because maybe it hasn't been upkept quite as well. Once again, this is the highway that I told you that used to be a river. You can see the shape of the highway, of course, does not look normal. So you have to actually kind of do little swerves to get through there, and people go pretty fast. Here's the ADK building. They might still have some offices there. It's still called ADK. And this is where the old Dentsu building is, right there. Tsukiji Market would have been over here, which is now abandoned, which is now just a parking lot. And this would be Tsukiji's outer market. Oh, it says right here, Tsukiji's outer market. Yeah, this is the Tsukiji Hongwanji Buddhist temple that I showed you about a minute ago, with a nice view that went across through this alleyway. And if you just walk this way, you have Kabuki Theater, like we're right there. And then you have Ginza Yonchome, which is the big intersection where the Wako department store is. But Higashi Ginza, I almost moved here. I found an apartment that was reasonably priced inside of here. And it was just a little bit too small for me, so I moved out to Shinozaki. And if you take a look at yesterday's live stream, you can see the difference in the type of neighborhood that I decided to live in, because I wanted to feel more at home, kind of. So we have that here. The reason why I'm walking this way is I just wanted to end at the nudes Kabuki Theater, just to give you a look at how they kept the traditional design. Now you can see it in the center of your screen. They kept the traditional design of the Kabuki Theater, but structurally it is a new building. And from a distance you could see that skyscraper that they put above it, utilizing the property that they own to make the most out of it, to make sure that Kabuki stays funded forever through rent. Okay. So I'm just gonna pan up now, and now you can see that skyscraper growing out of the back of it. It's pretty cool. (5V 3Y) right in here. Looks like an eyesore. Really? I think it looks okay. The Kabuki Theater, though, looks absolutely beautiful. New paint job. And every 20, 30 years, it did undergo a renovation. They've just finished off some more structural work right here. So they had some scaffolding there for a while, and now that's been removed. Now the theater looks quite nice now. After the Great Tohoku earthquake, March 11th, 2011, a lot of things had to be repaired. My apartment building had cracks in it where I used to live. My sink cracked and had to get a new sink. There's a little crack in it, but the earthquakes, the aftershocks, actually made the cracks wider. So I got a new sink out of it. That was kind of nice. Except the sink they replaced it with seemed a little bit cheaper than the one I had before. But I didn't complain. It was a new sink and it worked pretty good. Some sake barrels. And here's the front of the Kabuki Theater, which is closed today. Somebody noticed the Porsche in the background. It is a beautiful theater. It just looks different with that skyscraper in the back of it. But if you're looking at it from across the street, Kabuki is traditional Japanese theater where the men play all the parts. The men play the parts for the women too. It's been going on like that for centuries. I've seen it a couple of times. I've seen no theater, which is another form of Japanese theater. Kabuki is a lot more colorful. All right, so let me take you back for the final scene. Because my bicycle is over there anyways. Whoa, that's a new burger joint. That looks pretty good. What do you think, Nosh? Not too bad. Ju in Japanese means 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Whether or not that's what it actually means, I'm not really sure. I just know that it's a burger. Could eat a burger right now. All right, so we're gonna walk towards the building. I'm gonna wrap around and then get back to my bicycle and then say goodbye. But this has been fascinating, just taking a quick look at a 40-minute look, can you call that quick, of the old Dentsu building. And now we're seeing a clear image of what that penthouse up there looks like. I wonder what's up there. I'm telling you, I gotta get in touch with Sumitomo and just beg them to let me inside to take a look at it. I don't know if it's not safe enough. I'll wear a helmet if I have to. I want to get inside that building. That's a really famous statue of a dog and her puppies. Another reason to just walk over here from Ginza, take a look at that statue. I've covered that so many times in the past. All right, I'm wrapping around this ADK building. See, it's not called the ADK building anymore because they left. ADK was the third largest. I had so many good friends there. It's been ages. So many good friends at ADK. They'd invite me up for lunch up here. I'd wait for them right there on these wooden steps. Whoa, there's a Schmatz German sausage restaurant up there. Note to self, come back and get some sausages here with Peter. Interesting. What is ADK? ADK is, I can't remember exactly what it stands for, but it's the name of the third largest advertising agency in Tokyo, in Japan. The second is Hakuhodo, and the first is Dentsu. And then there's Tokyo, and there's a bunch of other ad agencies. And because I was doing video work since 2005, I had client work from the ad agencies, which is how I made my money before I was doing YouTube videos. NHK, reporting and work for ad agencies, doing some projects. Yeah, asatsu DK. That's what it means. Yeah, and I'm gonna be in an upcoming Tokyo Eye in a couple of weeks too. We're gonna film in the studio. I might be filming remote though. Oh, that's the exit where I get off for my neighborhood here, Shintomicho. I guess you could call Shintomicho my neighborhood. My hood. Irakcho line. Hey Dargon Darkfire, welcome, new traveler. Awesome. It's been a while, how you doing? So I'm gonna pan up one last time and I'm gonna try my best to try to get this story because I think it's fascinating looking back at all the photos and the history of it. This building, the old Dentsu headquarters, completed in 1967, was their headquarters until the year 2002. Then handed down to a subdivision called Dentsu Tech until 2014, and it's been abandoned ever since. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and definitely click like if you like these kinds of videos. I might be back tonight. On Sunday nights, Tokyo, especially during the pandemic and state of emergency, all the streets are really quiet. It looks deserted and abandoned, just like this building. So I might be in a neighborhood tonight, like very late at night, like 1 a.m., to show you another side of Tokyo that you haven't seen, that's very special to only now. So I hope that you join me for that live stream, the last of February. It's been a pretty tough month because I can't do all of the traveling that I wanted to do. I do have a new episode coming on the main channel up in Hokkaido that I filmed last year. I'm looking forward to releasing that. And then I have an episode on earthquake safety that's coming after that, and then sushi episode. So I already have 3 episodes lined up, and yeah, it should be a very eventful March as we ramp up for the summer coming. So have a good day, stay safe. Hit me up on the Discord server. And if you have any questions, ask me on Twitter because I just started tweeting a lot more. You can catch me there. Just @markme at Only in Japan TV. See you guys. Thanks, Jiman34. You can use that to get something for Kanai at the organic vegetable stand over there.